My full name is Steve Sunleaf, and I was with T.W. Clark at the time I was president, and when I joined the board I was with T.W. Clark, so been with T.W. Clark quite a few years. So. The chairs were, I had Dan Cuney as my vice president and John Madden as my second vice president. Well, as an organization, we didn't have a lot of issues at the time. Things were running pretty smooth, the economy was good, but one of the things that I really wanted to accomplish was bringing safety into the AGC and making that a focus. And so we transferred from having a plans room into a safety director here at the AGC, and then that was probably the biggest issue, if there was one, was getting Kurt out there and getting him known that he can provide these services to the members. Well, as far as the goals that I had coming in, safety was my top priority. I wanted to figure out a way that we as an organization could provide subcontractors, smaller general contractors, a standardized safety program that they could come in and they could borrow from if they needed it. That we could take this and turn it into an industry standard and make safety something that was available at a high level of expertise that could be passed down to subcontractors and those less sophisticated, at least at the time, that they could have something that they could borrow from and use and standardize it so that the industry could represent safety in a similar fashion on every project. That was really the main goal that I had. Other goals were to, really try to galvanize our board. We had a great board when I was there, and a lot of participation, and it was fun. And so that was something too we decided to do, was let's make this fun. So we added a few things like the Bloody Mary bar at the AGC convention, and we even did one board meeting at a bar just to kind of bring everybody together and change the dynamic a little bit. And I think we accomplished those, so I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, so interesting. Probably the biggest event that happened was Trump's election. I was vice president during the Obama period, and then I was president during the Trump period. And it was interesting going to DC and sitting in with these Congress folks and going into lobby. And so I got the juxtaposition of going in from an Obama era where regulations were massive, where we walk in, we had an agenda, we had 4 items that we were supposed to be hammering on these guys to try to get them to pass or to think about. And we were met with cold shoulders a lot of the time. It wasn't pleasant. Some of them we had to meet in stairwells with an intern to try to push our agenda. We didn't have a voice as much as we wanted to. A year later, Trump was elected, and it was the exact opposite. We went in with our 4 items, and one of them was tax reform. Well, we're going to do that. Watch the news tomorrow, because Kathy McMorris Rodgers is going to actually come out and talk about this, which she did. So all the items we wanted to have done, they were being pushed through. And so it was really interesting. Trump also brought in the regulation rule that if you add a regulation, you got to get rid of 2. So things started moving in our direction from an industry perspective, and that was probably the most interesting thing to me. Is you watch the news and this was this complete bipartisan thing, but I can tell you, as in DC, it did not feel that way at all. It felt like people were together. Now that may have changed by now. That was right at the beginning of his term, but at the time, that was probably the most interesting thing I think that I got to see and witness. So in 2017, the economy was booming. Everybody was busy. Board meetings were fun because we were sitting around talking about how everybody's doing well, and there wasn't a lot of crisis in the world at the time. It was pretty good. It was a boom year for sure. AGC Retro paid its highest ever At that time, it just kept going up too. So now I'm just little on that. I was the big guy at the time, but just because I was president at the time, nothing that I did. But it was no. The economy was great. The subcontract base was fully at work and flourishing. It was a good time. I guess if there was one word that I would use to sum them up, it would be fun. They really enjoyed what they were doing, and every time you'd walk in, it's a cheerful group of people, and you could tell they enjoy what they're doing, and they did a good job. So, no, it was really good to be involved with that group of people. They were every one of them brought something special to the table, so very happy to serve with them. So I grew up on a farm down by Tri-Cities, and so we were building buildings out there all the time, me and my dad. And when I graduated, I moved off to Hawaii for a while and ended up over there for a couple of years, then came back and started framing houses. And so framed houses for a year, and I remember sitting on a rooftop with a framer, and he reached into his nail bag at lunchtime and he pulled out an onion, and he took a bite of an onion. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm eating my lunch." I said, "That's what you're eating?" He says, "Oh yeah, that keeps me going." And I realized this guy was probably 35 going on 55. And I thought, man, I don't know if I could frame for the rest of my life. And so I decided I'd better go to college. So I headed to WSU and got a construction management degree, and the rest is history. So I've thought about the question as to projects, and I you know, what I get the sense of is what am I proud of, and what I'm proud of, I think most in my career, is the transition of our company from Tom and Clayton to me, and the success that we've seen, and the ability to lead just an absolutely wonderful group of people is probably what I'm most proud of. Those guys are winners, every one of them. They show up every day and they fight every day. They're there. It's a group of A players, and if I look back on what I'm most proud of, what I built, I learned a while ago I don't build buildings anymore. I build people who build buildings. I build teams who build buildings, and I build relationships that build buildings. And I couldn't be more proud of our group. I'm blessed and honored to serve with them. So that's, if I were to sum that up, that would be the answer. What I'm most proud of, my group of people. So a couple of things. So the biggest change, I think, within the AGC was we started roasting the outgoing president, and that's been a fun experience. I'm sure everybody enjoys that, and sometimes, well, I'm always on the receiving end of it so far, but no, it's such a great group of people that's a fun thing to do. But from an industry as a whole, technology has to be the answer to that question. Even when I was in college, we'd have to find a payphone to run a bid and call in, and then it went to flip phones, and now it's smartphones, and just the technology that has increased productivity is incredible. But the problem with it is also increased the expectations of owners on the ability to turn things over quicker. And so, while it's got its blessings, it's also got its curses with it too. But it's interesting to see it come. We had a technology fair at one of the AGC conventions, and they were talking about printing buildings, that the future is going to be hit print, and there goes your building. It goes up in 3D printing. I'm not holding out for that a lot of hope, but and nor do I want it. But I would say, yeah, as a whole, technology is probably the biggest change that we've seen as the years have gone by. Well, there's a kind of a lineage of thought to that originally I had thought, what I'd thought the AGC was a social group where you got together to drink beer, meet some folks, rub some elbows, learn who the other general contractors were in town, learn a little bit about them. But get in contact with subcontractors and vendors and just make some relationships. And so I thought, well, heck, I'll do that. I can go drink beer with the best of them. And I gave my run at that. And we had a lot of fun. And so originally, that's why I joined. I followed, as we mentioned, I worked for Tom Clark. Tom was a past president as well. Tom, he told me one day, he said, Steve, he goes, you should join, just get involved in it and stay involved and see what this does for you. And I didn't know why at the time. But I guess, so if the question is to the why, as I've gone through the chairs and I joined the board and got to meet just a great group of people on that board, and a couple of my best friends are on that board or were on that board, and really got to meet some cool people and have a good time and learn a lot. And you know, as Tom Stewart would say, that you know, a soloist isn't heard as loud as a chorus. And getting together in here with this group of people, serving the industry as a whole, you know, it was interesting because you come into it from a perspective of an individual. And I've got a company, or I worked for a company, and so what are the interests of our company? And it's not. This doesn't serve the interests of an individual. It serves the interests of the industry. And that when one industry succeeds, the others will as well. And you learn that there's a much bigger picture involved when you are a group together, when you do have that chorus, when you can go to the hill, when you can tell people you need to listen to us, and they do. That to me is what the AGC became. It was less about the social aspect and more about what can we do as an industry that can, and as leaders of industry, to come together and hear and have our voices heard. And at the end of the day, that is why I am involved in the AGC and will continue to be so. We are the AGC.